I'm at Walmart. I think my daughter's been taken.
What do you mean?
Taken by a stranger. I don't want him to kill her. I don't want to be one of those parents that are going through this.
The night of June 21st, 2013 appeared to be a typical evening in Jacksonville, Florida. You know, the kind where you go out, grab some groceries, and don't have a second thought about safety. It all started in a busy Walmart. Bright lights, crowded aisles, everything you'd expect. But that night turned into a nightmare that nobody saw coming. An 8-year-old girl named Cherish was kidnapped right there, in front of everyone, including her mom and sisters. Just like that, she was gone.
Ma'am, when your daughter followed after this defendant towards McDonald's, was that the last time you ever saw your daughter alive?
Yes.
Earlier that day, Cherish had been over the moon about their trip to California. She was all smiles, so excited about finally getting to see her dad again. Rain, her mom, wanted to make the day extra special. She thought taking the kids out shopping would be a good idea, something fun to do before the trip. They stopped at Dollar General, just looking to pick up some clothes, but money was tight. Rain struggled to afford even the basics, and you could hear them talking, trying to figure out what they could and couldn't get. It was a tough situation, one that every parent hopes they don't find themselves in. And that's when he showed up. This stranger just appeared out of nowhere. He looked friendly enough, the kind of guy who seemed like he genuinely wanted to help. He noticed Rain struggling and stepped in, saying he had a $100 gift card they could use to buy whatever they needed. He called himself Don. He even said his wife would meet them at Walmart and help them out. Rain, usually careful around strangers, felt reassured. The mention of his wife made it seem like there was nothing to be afraid of. And honestly, Rain was desperate. She wanted so badly to give her kids what they needed, so she went along with it.
He said his name is Don. He said he was supposed to meet his wife here, and his wife never showed up, and we've been here probably 2 hours, and she didn't show up, and I had this cart full of clothes that he said he was going to pay for with a $100 gift card, and I had a bad feeling. I thought, well, I feel like pinching myself because this is too good to be true. So I got to the checkout. He's not here. Cherish isn't here. She's 8 years old. She's supposed to go to California in the morning through the plane. And he knows, as I told him this, he knew when the store was closing. I had a bad feeling about him.
When they got to Walmart, at first, everything seemed all right. Don acted like he knew his way around the store. He moved with this weird confidence, guiding them through the aisles. But the longer they were there, the more that uneasy feeling crept up in Rain's mind. He knew things, store hours, where everything was, who might be around. He chatted with Rain, learning about their trip to California, about Cherish, about their whole day. It felt like he was getting way too close, way too comfortable. But Rain pushed down those feelings. She wanted to get through the shopping to make her kids happy. Then, Don said he needed to step away for a moment. He said he was heading to McDonald's. It was inside the same building, so Cherish, innocent and trusting, went with him. Rain stayed behind, thinking they'd just grab some food and come right back. She kept shopping, focusing on filling up the cart for the kids. It wasn't until she was ready to check out that she realized something was very, very wrong. The man was gone, and worse, so was Cherish. Panic hit hard. Rain called 911, her voice shaking with desperation. It was just after 11 p.m., and she could barely get the words out. Cherish was missing, her daughter gone. The disbelief hung thick in the air. How could this be happening? The police got there quickly, and Rain tried to explain everything that had happened. She told them about Don, how he had promised help, how his wife was supposed to be there but never showed up. When the detectives arrived, they listened closely. Rain's story matched what she had told the dispatcher, but there was something off.
I don't want him to kill her. I don't want to be one of those parents that are going through this.
Her voice was too calm, almost detached. She wasn't sobbing or breaking down the way they expected. There were no genuine tears. Rather, she applied a dry wipe to her eyes, as if she was attempting to simulate tears but was unable to do so. She discussed Cherish's disappearance, yet her conversation would abruptly shift to strange and irrelevant topics, such as the blue stroller she had forgotten in the man's van or the items in the Walmart cart she needed to return. It didn't make sense, and the detectives couldn't reconcile her focus on these small details while her daughter was out there missing. And her strange detachment wasn't the only thing that made them uneasy. Earlier, Rain had told the 911 operator that Cherish was supposed to be getting on a plane to California the next morning, a trip planned for Cherish to spend the summer with her dad. Rain's emotions seemed strange. There was anger mixed in with everything else. One of the detectives even wondered aloud if this whole situation was some twisted attempt to stop Cherish from leaving. Rain denied it, but there was still something about her behavior that just didn't sit right with them. Things got even more complicated when Rain's boyfriend Aaron showed up at Walmart. Instead of comforting each other or working together to help find Cherish, the two of them started arguing about the money Rain had spent at Dollar General, of all things. It was now well past midnight, close to 1:10 a.m., and Cherish had been missing for over 2 hours. Desperate for answers, the detectives turned to the store's surveillance footage. They needed to see for themselves what had happened in that Walmart to find any clues that might lead them to Cherish. As they watched the footage, they were stunned by what they saw. Don's white van was caught on camera arriving at Walmart just before 9 p.m., with Rain and her 3 daughters inside. They entered the store at around 9:16 p.m., and it all seemed so ordinary. Rain and the kids, Cherish, Destiny, and Nevaeh, just walked in like any other family out for some late shopping. The footage showed them browsing in the children's shoe section, Rain picking out some shoes while the girls wandered off into a nearby aisle. A few minutes later, Don appeared on camera. He moved around the store, eventually meeting up with Rain and the girls. At some point, he slipped something into Rain's shopping cart, a detail that wouldn't make sense until much later. For now, he just seemed to be helping out, sticking close to the family, almost like he was a part of their group. Don stayed near them, watching over the girls. At one point, Cherish and Don were alone, and he was helping her try on a pair of shoes.
I had a strange feeling about him when I first met him, and he took her to the dressing room twice. And I was hoping that she would be okay. And I was looking at the shoes. And I didn't want him to think that I was overly protective, freaking out. But now, they're not here.
It all looked innocent enough, but the detectives couldn't shake the bad feeling growing in their stomachs. The footage showed Cherish following Don, while Rain stayed busy looking at clothes. Over the next half hour, the girls kept moving around the store, sometimes with Don, sometimes without. The whole time, Rain seemed completely unaware of any danger. She was focused on shopping, like this was just a normal night. Then, at 10:38 p.m., the footage showed Cherish and Don heading back to the shoe aisle, just the two of them. They spoke briefly, and then Cherish ran back to her mom, said something quickly, and hurried off to join Don again. Rain overheard Don saying something about ordering cheeseburgers from McDonald's, and she let Cherish go with him as it was inside the mall. But McDonald's was clearly closed. Instead of bringing Cherish back, Don turned sharply toward the front door, with Cherish right behind him. The footage showed them leaving the store at 10:42 p.m., walking right through the parking lot, past cars and people. No one stopped them. 2 minutes later, at 10:44 p.m., Don's van was seen pulling out of the parking lot, disappearing down a dark alley and onto a main road. Meanwhile, Rain had no idea that her daughter had already left the store. She continued shopping with her 2 younger girls for another 15 minutes, unaware that Cherish was no longer there. It wasn't until the store's closing announcement at 11 p.m. that Rain, Destiny, and Nevaeh made their way to the front of the store, expecting to see Cherish and Don waiting. But no matter where they looked, there was no sign of them. At 11:16 p.m., after another 15 minutes of frantic searching, Rain finally contacted the police. By then, Cherish and Don had already been gone for over 45 minutes. Detectives reviewed the store's surveillance footage, hoping it might help them make sense of the situation. They were shocked by what they discovered. In one clip, they noticed Don slipping something into Rain's shopping cart, a coil of rope, a chilling detail that made their blood run cold. It was left behind like an ominous reminder that Don had a plan all along. By now, it was 2:10 a.m. The detectives, aware of their limited time, were becoming increasingly desperate. They reviewed the footage again, piecing together every second they could. At this point, they had enough evidence to determine that this was a kidnapping. Finally, at 2:30 a.m., more than 3 hours since Cherish had vanished, the Amber Alert process began. It was late. Precious time had already slipped away, and now every second mattered even more. In the meantime, the detectives used the Jacksonville mugshot database, combing through for any match, and then they found him, a 56-year-old man named Donald James Smith. What they discovered only deepened their fears. Donald James Smith had a record, a harrowing list of offenses that stretched back 3 decades. 9 of his 20 arrests were for crimes involving children. His record included theft, fraud, possession of obscene materials, and even assault on a child. It painted a dark, horrifying picture of the man they were now racing to find. What hit hardest was that Smith had just been released from prison 21 days earlier. He had served time for impersonating a children's services agent, trying to lure a young girl away from her grandmother. It was terrifying to think that someone like him was out, free to hurt others again. With this knowledge, the search for Cherish became frantic. They needed a breakthrough, something that would lead them to her. At 4:21 a.m., over 5 hours since Cherish disappeared, the Amber Alert finally went out. The description of Cherish, Don, his white van, and even the missing blue stroller was broadcast across Florida. It wasn't long before the tips started to come in. One homeowner found a baby blue stroller leaning against the side of his house as he was trying to mow the lawn. His house was on Rutgers Road, just 3 miles from the Walmart. He knew it matched the description from the news, and when officers arrived, they found more. 2 large trash bins nearby held the Dollar General purchases along with Cherish's belongings, her pink headband, her little purple flip-flops. It was a devastating blow. The house was empty, with no sign of Cherish or Don ever being there. The uncertainty, the not knowing, made it feel like hope was slipping through their fingers. The longer they searched, the harder it got to keep faith that they'd find Cherish alive. But no matter what, they knew they had to keep trying. Time was running out, and they needed a miracle. Detectives weren't ready to give up hope. Not yet. They had no idea just how close they were to uncovering the chilling truth. The night felt endless, but then, finally, a caller's tip sparked a surge of hope. Highlands Church, just 1 block away from where the stroller was found, might hold answers. Officers were on their way to investigate when they caught a stroke of pure luck. The suspect's white van was spotted driving southbound on the highway. Instantly, everything shifted. This was it. They quickly began to coordinate a high-stakes takedown, driven by the hope that Cherish might still be alive, just within their grasp. They had to wait for the right moment when they could box him in and there would be nowhere for him to run. Finally, at just the right spot, with exits blocked and nowhere for the suspect to escape, the officers lit up their lights and sirens. The van pulled over, stopping on one side of the highway. Officers stepped out, shouting commands. The driver stepped out slowly, hands in the air, following each instruction to the letter. They told him to move to the left, to kneel, to put his hands on his head. It was dawn. There was no sign of Cherish. The van was empty. No Cherish. It was a blow, a devastating one. Despite the setback, they had Don in custody. They had to push forward. They questioned him relentlessly. Where was Cherish? Don claimed that she had jumped out of the van at a stoplight and ran away. It was a flimsy story, one that none of the officers believed. His pants were wet, and he said it was just sweat from substance abuse. But that didn't add up either. Don went silent, refusing to answer any more questions. The only hope was to take him in, try to break through his lies before it was too late. They had to get to the truth, and fast. They read him his rights and hoped he'd give them something, anything that might lead them to Cherish. He was uncooperative and cold, refusing to speak. They moved him, got him to change out of his wet clothes so they could be collected for evidence. Then he was placed in a new room, waiting for transport to the jail. And it was in that silence, when he thought no one was listening, that he muttered something chilling. It was enough for detectives to move forward with charges. They had enough evidence to charge Don with kidnapping. He was taken away in handcuffs. Inside the prison, Don shared details with a fellow inmate, details he hadn't been willing to share with the police. He was unaware that an undercover officer in the prison was recording the entire conversation. The audio captured something even more harrowing than they had expected. As a group of young girls passed through the prison area, Don and the other inmate could be heard sharing their twisted observations. Don spoke with a sick kind of admiration, talking about how they were right in his alley, describing his predatory thoughts without any hint of remorse. Finally, at 8:55 a.m., nearly 10 hours after Cherish's disappearance, a 911 call came in that changed everything. Someone was calling about a conspicuous van over on Rutgers Road, a white van pushed behind some bushes. The caller mentioned that it had been there early in the morning, near Highlands Church.
How long ago did you see it?
Oh man, my goodness. You picked me up from work at 7 o'clock, so that was like 7:20. Yeah, 7:20.
It was like that. We didn't say nothing.
We didn't know anything until just now.
All right, and you said it's now gone?
Yes, ma'am.
But you think he may have, just in case, he might have dumped something?
Right, we don't know, but just in case, it looked suspicious because it was all the way to the back.
They'd heard about the girl taken from Walmart and thought this might be connected. The officers had no time to waste. The K-9 unit was already out there, searching near Highlands Church. As they followed the creek near the church, they saw fresh tire tracks leading deeper into the woods. They moved carefully, and that's when they found it. A white plastic shopping bag, a wet black sock. And then they found something that no one wanted to see. Something that tore at their hearts. Cherish was there. 18-year-old Cherish Perrywinkle was found submerged in the water, wedged beneath a fallen tree. She was naked from the waist down. The sight was too much to bear. It was every fear they had come true. The autopsy findings were devastating. Cherish had suffered more than anyone could have imagined. The brutality of what had happened to her was written all over her body. She had experienced extreme violence that left her internal organs severely damaged. She had also experienced several bruises and abrasions, including noticeable marks on her upper body.
Her eyeballs bled. Cherish did not die quickly, and she did not die easily. In fact, hers was a brutal and tortured death. And after he killed her, he pulled her little, lifeless body through the woods, pushed it under the water, forced it under a tree, and took asphalt, bricks, and debris and weighted her down. Because he planned for no one to find her. But as you learn, things did not go according to this plan.
There was more. Her gums had bled due to the tightness of the gag around her mouth. She displayed signs of blunt force trauma on her head, and her hands and arms sustained defensive wounds as she attempted to defend herself. The final determination was ligature strangulation. Every detail of the autopsy revealed the sheer violence of the choked death. On the day of Don's arrest, they examined him and found physical evidence that further connected him to the crime. Even then, they found traces of her DNA still on him, more irrefutable proof of his guilt. The overwhelming evidence left no room for doubt. Authorities charged Don Smith with kidnapping, assault, and the murder of Cherish Perrywinkle. The proof against him was overwhelming, and it was clear just how dangerous he was. And yet, even sitting in lockup, Don couldn't stop himself. He was caught on tape making disturbing comments about young girls to other inmates. It was like he wasn't capable of even pretending to be normal. Even when it could have helped his case, he couldn't fake being anything other than the predator he was. The recordings captured Don talking about his twisted thoughts, showing no regret or humanity. It was chilling, knowing that even behind bars, he continued to see young girls as nothing more than targets. It became clear that he was beyond redemption, beyond any hope of rehabilitation. He had taken Cherish's life in the most brutal way imaginable, and he wasn't even sorry. Despite everything, despite the overwhelming evidence, Don pleaded not guilty. He chose to rely on the verdict of a jury. He even tried to have the jail recordings thrown out, claiming they were a violation of his rights. But none of it worked. In February 2018, after just 19 minutes of deliberation, the jury found him guilty on all charges: kidnapping, battery, and first-degree murder. The jury sentenced Donald James Smith to death, and he remains incarcerated at the Union Correctional Institution in Rayford, Florida, awaiting his execution. As for Rain, in the month following Cherish's abduction, the two other children, Nevaeh and Destiny, were removed from her custody.